Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're breaking down the major differences between late season rifle and archery hunting, right? And this is going to be one of our last tactical videos for the season. A lot of us Western hunters are winding down now that we're at the very tail end of October for the big game like the elk and the mule deer. I know that there's going to be some hunts that go on through November, but we're going to move on and we're going to start hammering on a lot of training and preparation for next year. We're going to be bringing on podcast guests, just diving into a whole lot of other topics and things rather than just the tactics of the hunting. And so we'll move on after this. But for now, let's focus on that rifle and archery hunting, those differences between the two, because by mid-October, everything in the mountains starts to shift. The rut is tapering off, the weather is changing fast, and both elk and mule deer are transitioning from high energy, rut-driven movement to survival-focused pattern. This time of year exposes the real divide between the two hunting styles, and understanding how to adjust your approach can make or break your success. If you're carrying a bow after elk, you're now up against animals that have gone silent, tightened their travel routes, and settled into smaller, safer zones. They've been pressured, educated, and are on high alert. For rifle hunters, it's a completely different story. You've got reach on your side, but you're also competing with colder temperatures, a lot of shifting winds, and animals that are moving less during daylight. The challenge isn't just closing the distance, it's finding them before they disappear into heavy cover or move nocturnally. In this episode, we're going to unpack how these late season shifts affect both weapon types and what adjustments will help you capitalize on them. We're going to start with the behavioral changes that take place from mid-October through November, then get into timing and terrain, tactical differences, patience and judgment, and finish with the mental edge you need to stay persistent when the mountains turn cold and quiet. Whether you're slinging arrows or sending lead, the key to late season success is often adaptation. And today, we're going to break down exactly how to do that. The second half of October marks a clear turning point in big game behavior. The frantic energy of September, the bugles, the herding, the long daylight movement, it's gone. Elk and mule deer both start to shift into a new phase. For elk, bulls are run down from the rut. They've lost weight, burned energy, and their number one priority becomes food and recovery. They pull away from cows, move toward isolated feeding zones, and favor areas that offer both security and feed within a short distance. Think north-facing timber adjacent to open benches or meadow edges where they can feed at night and bed close during the day. Mule deer, on the other hand, are starting to heat up, right? By late October, the younger bucks begin checking does, and as November approaches, mature bucks start to move more in daylight as the rut ramps up. The difference in timing creates two completely different dynamics on the mountain. For elk hunters, especially archery hunters who still have late season tags, calling becomes ineffective for the most part. Bulls aren't looking for cows anymore, and the vocal activity that once filled the basins is mostly gone. Your best bet becomes intercepting travel between feed and cover, or keying in on small bachelor groups focused on recovery. For rifle hunters, you're operating in a different world. The reach of your rifle opens up more terrain options, but the animals you're after are far less visible than they were a few weeks ago. Elk may only move at dawn and dusk. Mule deer bucks might show briefly on an open slope in first light, then vanish into the thickest cover they can find. Success comes from timing those brief windows and knowing where those animals feel safe when the sun comes up. Late October through November is a season of opposites. For elk, that activity is going to slow. For mule deer, it ramps up. For archers, you're fighting silence and proximity. For rifle hunters, you're balancing distance and opportunity. But in both cases, success depends on reading that behavioral transition and adjusting your expectations. The hunters who recognize that shift, who stop hunting like it's September and start hunting like it's November, are the ones who consistently tag out when the rest of the mountain goes quiet. As the season shifts into late October and November, timing becomes one of the biggest separating factors between rifle and archery hunting. You're no longer dealing with long, active mornings or constant midday bugling. Everything is condensed. The window of daylight activity is shorter, colder, and more deliberate. How you use that window and where you choose to set up or glass from will look very different depending on what's in your hands. For archery hunters, this is the season of patience and pattern. By now, elk and deer have fallen into consistent feeding to bedding routines. They're not traveling far and their daylight exposure is minimal. That means your best opportunity often comes during the first and last 30 minutes of light. This makes location choice critical. You've got to be where they already want to go, not necessarily trying to pull them to you. In many cases, that means getting in tight to bedding cover, staging areas, or narrow travel corridors connecting timber to feed. If you're sitting water, you're banking on unseasonably warm afternoons. If you're still hunting or ambushing, wind and thermals become everything. By late October, mornings are cold and air is heavy. Thermals stay down longer, but as the sun rises, they can reverse quickly. Archery hunters have to adapt on the fly, adjusting setup, elevation, or moving with the wind to keep from being detected inside that critical 100-yard bubble. The closer you hunt, the more those micro shifts matter. For rifle hunters, the timing equation expands, but the game changes. You've got reach, and that opens up country. But late season terrain can punish the unprepared. Rifle success often comes down to, covering elevation and letting your optics do the walking. Glassing points with good morning and evening visibility become your best weapon. When the snow line starts to drop, got to pay attention to where the feed meets cover on sunny slopes. South and west facing aspects melt first and hold green longer, pulling both elk and deer out of the dark timber, even if only briefly. Unlike archery hunters, rifle hunters can afford to hang back and glass through multiple cycles of movement. You're not trying to just close to bow range. You're trying to predict where that animal will appear within your effective distance. That might mean setting up on a vantage point at first light and staying there all morning, picking apart every opening and transition zone before moving on. One of the most important distinctions between the two seasons is mobility. Archery hunts in this time frame are about controlled movement, slow, quiet, deliberate. Rifle hunts are about strategic movement, covering basins, ridges, and canyons efficiently, often with glass and sometimes by foot. And as the days shorten, timing becomes about endurance. The hunter who stays behind the glass an extra hour when everybody else heads back to camp often finds success in that fading light window. Finally, pay attention to snow and temperature. Early storms can push animals lower, but it's not always immediate. Elk, especially, will linger higher than most hunters expect until snowpack and feed availability force them down. Archery hunters might have to work higher, closer to cover, while rifle hunters should focus on those mid-elevation benches and timber edges where herds start to stage before migration. Late season timing and terrain doesn't just test your knowledge, they test your patience. The animals are where the food, cover, and comfort overlap, and your weapon determines how close you need to get to take advantage of that. When it comes to tactics, rifle and archery hunting in the late season require pretty different approaches, almost like playing two different games on the same mountain. The conditions, animal behavior, and terrain might be identical, but the way you move, observe, and make decisions, that's going to change dramatically based on your weapon and your effective range. For archery hunters, everything revolves around stealth and proximity. You're not hunting for movement, you're hunting for opportunity inside a tight circle of terrain where animals already feel safe. This late in the year, elk and mule deer aren't curious or vocal. They're focused on survival. That means they're hypersensitive to sound, scent, and silhouette. Instead of calling aggressively or trying to pull animals in, this becomes a game of ambush and anticipation. You've got to find fresh sign and slow down. If you can identify a consistent feeding to bedding route, your best play might be to slip into a small pocket along that line and let the animals come to you. Late season archery success often comes down from setups that require minimal movement, a tucked in blind spot on a side hill trail or a shadowed timber pocket above a feeding bench, or a wind favorable pinch point where animals naturally funnel. Every move has to be deliberate. Crunching snow, frozen branches, and shifting winds can blow a setup faster than anything this time of year. Calling is probably not going to work. Instead of trying to excite bulls, maybe you might use a subtle cow call or a contact mew to help you sound like part of a herd, buy you some extra time when an animal pauses. The key there is restraint. Overcalling or moving too soon is a common mistake late season archers make. Patience kills more bulls and bucks in October and November than any fancy call sequence is ever going to get you. Rifle hunters, on the other hand, play the opposite side of the strategy board. Instead of minimizing movement, you're maximizing visibility. You're trying to locate animals first, then plan a safe, effective approach that capitalizes on range. This is the season of glassing. Long sits behind binoculars and spotting scopes, picking apart shaded timber, avalanche chutes, and south-facing slopes one piece at a time. Once you spot an animal, your next move depends on wind, cover, and topography. The challenge isn't just spotting, it's the maneuvering without blowing the opportunity. Unlike bow hunting, rifle tactics often involve leapfrogging between vantage points or shadowing animals across drainages to keep tabs on their movement. Patience is still critical, but it's expressed differently. You might wait hours for a buck to stand from his bed or for thermals to stabilize before making a move. Timing and wind remain your top priorities. The difference is you can afford to play the distance game, but don't let that lull you into rushing shots. Long-range opportunities amplify every mistake. Poor rest, rushed breathing, or misjudged angles. Precision replaces stealth as your deciding factor. Then there's the issue of pressure. Rifle seasons generally bring more hunters, trucks, and gunfire echoing through the canyons. Animals know it. They change behavior almost overnight. You can use that to your advantage if you think ahead. While a lot of hunters push through the bottoms or obvious ridges, animals often slip laterally or side hill into security pockets nearby. Rifle hunters who glass into those escape routes after opening morning often find the same animals everyone else just pushed. For both weapon types, wind is the ultimate equalizer. Archery hunters are fighting it minute to minute. Rifle hunters are calculating it over hundreds of yards. No matter what you're carrying, if you don't account for wind, you're not going to close the deal. In the end, the biggest tactical difference is this. Archery hunting in the late season is about becoming invisible, while rifle hunting is about seeing everything. Master that contrast, and you're going to be able to adapt to any late season hunt you take on. Late season hunting is where patience and judgment collide. It's cold, the light is fading fast, and animals are moving less, meaning every opportunity you get feels amplified. But not every shot should be taken. The difference between rifle and archery hunting during this time of year often comes down to how you recognize, create, and capitalize on ethical shot opportunities when they're few and far between. For archery hunters, the late season tests your composure and discipline. You've likely spent hours, maybe days, weeks, getting within range of a single opportunity. The animals are on edge, the wind is fickle, and adrenaline can take over fast. In this season, your effective range may also shrink. Cold air can stiffen your muscles, slow your draw, and make holding it full draw feel heavier. Layering also affects how anchor points and string clearance are affected, something you don't deal with a lot in September. Late season bow hunters have to remind themselves that precision matters more than the pressure. A 50-yard shot on a calm September morning might be comfortable, but in November with frozen fingers and erratic wind, that same shot might fall outside your ethical zone. The best archers are the ones who know when to let down and wait for a better shot, even if it means passing up a bull or a buck that others would rush. Late season encounters also mean more angled or obstructed shot windows, shooting uphill into timber or through narrow openings in snow-laden brush. Patience in those moments separates consistent bow hunters from lucky ones. Waiting 10 more seconds for a step or a clear line can make all the difference in a clean pass-through versus a long, miserable tracking job. For rifle hunters, ethical range takes on a different meaning. You've got distance on your side, but with that comes a new set of challenges. The cold affects barrel harmonics, air density, and even bullet drop. Wind is magnified over long shots, and mirage or snowfall can distort perception. Shooting a bull at 500 plus yards might be possible on paper, but in steep country with wind swirling through multiple drainages, it's rarely a guaranteed outcome. Rifle hunters should use this time of year to rely on restraint just as much as their equipment. If you can't confirm a clean shot with a solid rest, a steady heart rate, and stable conditions, it's not worth pulling the trigger. Instead, use your rangefinder and terrain to reposition or close the gap. Late season animals often hold in predictable spots for longer, so give yourself time to make it a high percentage shot, not just a long one. Both weapon types share one universal truth. Late season recovery is hard. Blood trails vanish in snow. If it's snowing on you, cold stiffens muscles, and long tracks can take hours. That's why shot placement discipline is everything. A marginal hit in early September might still mean a short recovery with visible blood. In November, it could mean losing the trail entirely. Ethical hunting isn't just about how far you can shoot, it's about how confidently you can recover what you shoot. That's where experience and honesty with your own abilities comes in. For bow hunters, that might mean tightening shot selection to 40 yards or less. For rifle hunters, it might mean cutting the range limit you practiced all summer by a couple hundred yards once the wind and weather starts to stack against you. Every ethical decision you make now echoes through how you end your season. Clean, confident, and respect for the animal. Ultimately, the goal is never just to tag out. It's to do it the right way. The late season rewards those who think like predators but act with purpose. The rifle hunters who wait for the right angle and the bow hunter who passes on a bad lane are playing the same game, right? Patience and precision over impulse. In the cold, quiet months, that's what defines true success. The late season doesn't just test your gear or your tactics, it tests your grit. This is where mental endurance starts separating those who tag out from those who head home early. October 15th through the end of November is often cold, quiet, and unpredictable. It's the time of year when you can go days without seeing animals, not hear any bugles, and start questioning every decision you've made. But this stretch, this grind, is also when the most disciplined hunters consistently find success. For archery hunters, the late season is a mental marathon. You're hunting animals that are skittish, silent, and extremely tough to close on. You might go an entire week without a single shot opportunity. Every frozen morning, every failed stalk, every swirl of wind, that ruins a setup. It all chips away at your focus. But staying mentally sharp is what keeps you in the game. When you're bow hunting this time of year, you're not just waiting for noise, you're reading micro details, tracks, beds, new disturbed earth, right? That awareness fades when your patience fades. The best archers learn to reset mentally after every blown encounter, to treat every new day like the slate's been wiped clean. It's about optimism and execution, not emotion. For rifle hunters, discipline takes a different shape. The temptation is to move too much, glass too quickly, or shoot too far. But late season rifle success usually comes from the opposite: stillness, restraint, and trust in the process. You may spend all morning staring at the same basin, waiting for a single buck or bull to stand from his bed. A lot of hunters give up after an hour. The ones who sit that extra 30 minutes or another hour, glass one more pocket, or climb one more ridge, they're the ones dragging meat off the mountain. The mental side of rifle hunting isn't about the shot, it's about the wait. You have to trust the work you put in before sunrise will eventually pay off. And when an opportunity finally appears, you have to flip the switch instantly, from calm observer to decisive shooter, without letting adrenaline or fatigue take over. Both types of hunters face the same mental challenge in different ways: the grind of uncertainty. There's nothing easy about late season hunting. The hours are shorter, the weather's harsher, and the animals are smarter. But mental toughness doesn't mean pretending it's easy. It means accepting that it's hard and showing up anyway. It means sitting through the storm, hiking through knee-deep snow, or glassing through fog because you know that persistence eventually cracks patterns wide open. The other part of the late season mental game is adaptability. The hunters who cling to what worked in September are often the ones who burn out by November. The mindset has to evolve. Less about calling, more about positioning. Less about excitement, more about execution. Every decision, where to glass, where to move, when to hold, comes down to staying persistent and focused, not impatient. There's a quiet satisfaction that comes from earning a late season animal. It's not about luck, it's about endurance. The mental and physical willingness to keep showing up when the conditions are tough, when your confidence dips, and when others have already packed it in. The truth is, late season hunts don't reward the most talented hunters. They reward the ones who refuse to quit. So whether you're carrying a rifle or a bow, remember, the weapon is just the tool. The mindset behind it is what defines the hunt. If you can stay disciplined, patient, and relentless through the worst conditions of the year, then success, sooner or later, becomes inevitable. When the late season hits, the mountains become a different world. The rut is over, the pressure is high, and the weather turns unpredictable. But whether you're carrying a rifle or a bow, success always comes down to adaptation. Understanding that October 15th through November demands patience, strategy, and discipline more than any other stretch of the year. Archery hunters have to accept the grind of tight encounters, shifting thermals, and razor-thin margins for error. Rifle hunters have to balance long-range opportunity with restraint, reading wind, and terrain instead of chasing noise or movement. Each style has its edge, but both share the same core truth. The late season rewards those who can slow down, think clearly, and keep grinding long after others have quit. When you understand the animal behavior, adjust to terrain and timing, and stay mentally locked in, this stretch of the season can produce some of the most rewarding hunts of your life. The weather, the silence, the solitude that push hunters off the mountain are the same conditions that can create your best opportunities. If you can stay focused and flexible through those cold, quiet days, you're going to separate yourself from 90% of the pressure and start finding animals where others aren't even looking. If you're serious about taking this kind of knowledge deeper, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than just a membership. It's a way to sharpen your edge with exclusive tools, strategies, and a tribe of hunters who refuse to quit. Inside, you're going to get 20% off site-wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear. A member-only t-shirt shipped to your door every month. These shirts aren't available anywhere else. Full access to the digital content vault, guides, checklists, fitness programming, backcountry strategies, and mindset training, a private Facebook group with direct access to me, and a community of driven hunters who live relentless. Direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice on training, hunting strategy, or sharpening your edge, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways exclusively for members. This is built for the guys who train for the hunt, push themselves in the off-season, and want to be part of a tribe that makes them better. If you're ready for that kind of inner circle, then Team Backbone is waiting for you at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Thanks for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.